in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity. Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, could either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Go ahead.
Self-awareness. This is something that we hear a lot. Okay? You're not self-aware. And sometimes people use it to juxtapose a certain kind of overconfidence or exuberance. Like, you're not self-aware. And there are many other things that come along with it. Now, let me just state my position on this particular phrase. I hate it. I don't like it. I don't like phrases that are very, very broad, don't mean crap, sound like the kind of crap that you should have learned more clearly when you were 12 years old. And if you're still using things like self-aware, anywhere past 25, you should be shot. But, hey, thank God I'm not dictator of the world, right? So you are more, you're a much kinder, gentler soul, aren't you, K. Polymath?
Yeah, I'm a little bit more self-aware, I guess.
Ooh, and here we go. So how then would you begin to define this self-awareness crap? And let's unearth and see if there's anything useful in there.
Right. Okay. So self-awareness, it does actually mean a real thing. It's just obviously like many words like ignorance. And I want to use the word ignorance here as a marker to kind of compare definitions and what people mean by it. So when people say self-aware, some people mean, let's say one time I was inside a store. Me and my friend were laughing and talking, and you know what? The line was taking too long. And I was like, oh man, if we wait here any longer, we might die from COVID. 2. Now, obviously, this woman in front of me, she was taking so long, and she looked at us and she said, she actually spoke to the cashier. Oh yeah, some people are just not self-aware. Again, talking about us. And I was like, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing it so that you can listen to what I'm saying. And that's the whole point. So there's an added aspect of this is socially unacceptable behavior, the way that you're acting or presenting yourself. If you are self-aware enough, you would know what's happening and then you wouldn't do that. So it's also a way to kind of control people's behavior. Again, same thing with ignorance. Someone might call you ignorant, and they mean that if you just knew what you were doing and how wrong or how bad it looks, you wouldn't do it. So you're ignorant to the social cultural norms.
So you're an idiot.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to say.
Okay. So an idiot is someone whom is caught up in their idiosyncrasies. They are only seeing things from their particular context. They cannot switch context. They have very limited, they're myopic, they have blinders on. That's what it is to be an idiot. And you're saying, okay, a certain kind of ignorance is, okay, so you're saying it's in that same realm of ignorance. And if, okay, they opened up their eyes, they will be more self-aware. And, especially self-awareness, meaning yourself in the context of others, right? So it's not just you looking and navel gazing, but it's understanding where you are in the chessboard, right?
Understanding and also accepting. There's also an imaginary line there of, okay, once you now know where you are, you need to accept your position. if you are talking about delusional people, some people of a particular gender sometimes say things like, we're all 10s. Okay, right. So if and people like us might call them delusional. Now, if they're self-aware enough, they might realize they are 6.2. And that means something in the chessboard of a sexual marketplace, for example. So the unaware person will just keep saying nonsense like I'm a 10. It doesn't mean anything. Or they will even try to break the chessboard and say, well, these rules are made up anyways. Translation, beauty is subjective. These are the people who fight the context awareness.
100%. Okay. So they are saying we're all 10s because we want to feel like a 10, because also beyond the feeling, maybe they listen to some woo person. Maybe they went to a Deepak Chopra gathering in a conference or something, and they heard about the secret and the law of attraction, did they not? Right? And after hearing about these things, they say, hey, I should confess that I am a 10 and I will manifest 10-like outcomes. Now, here's the conundrum, okay? I happen to agree that you can manifest 10-like outcomes from the internal, okay? But you're still a 6. Now, how do we resolve this? How do you make sense of what I just said, okay? Because I'm not particularly inclined to explain myself on this topic, because I already said that I hate it, and I think that it's BS, and it's child's, like, telling adults about self-awareness is ridiculous. But I know the sheep out there are they're not aware. But how do we resolve this thing? Hey, you are a 6, but also internally, if you manifest that 10 energy, then you get 10 kinds of outcomes, generally speaking. How do we?
Okay, so actually, it's quite interesting. So actually, you mentioned that the sheep are unaware. The lions are also unaware. The lions just happen to occupy a higher plane of that hierarchy. The person that's self-aware in this situation is a shepherd, because he can see it all. So what you want to do to kind of circumvent, being a 6 is be a shepherd. See what that 10 outcome that you're looking for, and how you can manifest it. A very simple way for guys, let's say, in a situation about relationships is, if you're a 5 and you're a guy, there are obvious ways to get 10-like outcomes. Get money, get physically in shape, learn how to understand, communicate, be intelligent, be someone who is other people want to be around. You will definitely get 10-like outcomes. In fact, you could even technically operate as a 10 in a context where the status, which is something that men are valued for, is the highest. So let me give you a simple example here. Asian men are not necessarily seen as the standard for a man. Why? They might have the money. They have the most paid people in America and many Western countries, but they don't have that status symbol because of their lack of that testosterone, or that kind of aggression that is usually seen in men. Now, black men, although we don't have as much money on average, we are actually seen up there close to the white man. Sorry, Kakuna. But if we want to manifest the Kakuna-like outcomes and perception, we've got to get more things achieved than he did. So this is how you're able to get the outcomes of the higher state, by manifesting the states which are missing.
It's easy for the man. Let's make it harder.
What
is the woman that is the 6? Right? You're like, oh, if the man, you're a 6, you could do this, you could do that, you could do the other. Okay, let's try to make it more complicated. You're telling the woman, hey, don't be delusional, be the shepherd. What is a woman that is a 6? And by the way, let's reduce that number, because 6 is almost perfect for a woman. For those of us who understand,
right,
the perfection of the number 6, it's exactly where you want to be as a woman. By the way, and if you don't know and you're a woman listening to this, you'll go find out. But let's say you're a 4, okay? What now can you do? Okay, I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire. Practically here. What is the self-awareness of a 4? First and foremost, how they see themselves, they see the outcomes, and then how can they actually game it, okay, and you're a woman. You're talking about physical attractiveness here. What do you do in that situation?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So, okay. First of all, obviously, I'll still repeat one part. Be at your peak of physical perfection. So we're assuming four as in face, not body
Yep,
structure,
yep, yep.
correct?
Yeah.
Cool. So, yeah, so be at your peak in physical shape first. Second, you need to develop soft skills that are pleasant because the thing is many eights and nines are not people that other men or men want to be around for any
Hmm,
selected period of time. They tend to,
correct.
because society doesn't hold them accountable, they tend to just not be aware of anything around themselves. They tend to be selfish. Again, tendencies here. Don't come for us and be like, no.
Well, and even if you want to come for us, what are we saying? We're saying there's such a thing as being spoiled. And if you say
Yes.
no, there's no such thing as being spoiled, then then get the hell out of the room. I want to throw up. Okay, so there's such a thing as being spoiled, and these particular people are spoiled, not through no fault of theirs. But when you are a 10 or close to, there is no 10 that exists because whatever.
Right,
But when
right.
you are close to the standard, okay, of physical attractiveness as a woman, and we know that physical attractiveness is a very powerful tool, right? Very powerful thing. You're going to be spoiled, okay? There's a tendency, therefore, that this spoiled or this kind of, shall we say, leeway that you've been given will manifest itself in certain negative behavior that makes it such that you're undesirable to be around. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes, 100%. So if you are this fool, learn how to be a nice, kind, respectful person that adds value. Be very self-aware, and that's why this topic is interesting. If you're self-aware as a fool, what that means in this case, in the goals that you seek, is you look for what a man actually wants. You figure out what men actually want, and you give it to them. If, for example, the guy wants to be treated when he comes back from work with a certain kind of food ready, with a certain kind of questions and willingness to engage with his story and his life and particularities there, then give him that. If you're self-aware enough to the environment, you'll know what the environment wants or how the environment functions, and obviously you can then look it within your own self and then change parts of you. You can't be one of these. You can't be a 4 and want a 10, or rather, a man of high value, so to speak, and not want to change yourself. You definitely can't be listening to "You're enough, sis." That's when you're just going to hell. That's lack of self-awareness.
The road to hell paved with "You're enough, sis. You got this, girl. You go, girl." The road to hell is paved with such statements. Such statements don't have good outcomes. Such statements are not about reality. Such statements are not about actually how to get what you want. And we all know this. I think there is obviously a place for such statements. Okay. Let's call it the
In
HR
hell.
department. I'm saying that the HR department, a place where you could go, the nurse, let's say, place where you could go get first aid and some succor for your wounds or whatever. That's what that place is for. In other words, a thing that has come out from the conversation we've had so far is that self-awareness is about taking a big thing that you want. Let's say, oh, there is this score. I'm a 4 in the scoreboard. Okay. And then breaking it down into the many little pieces. And all of a sudden you find out that I can't change the 4 thing, but there are many little things on this board that I can move around. You said, hey, I can become physically fit, right? At the peak, which, by the way, we know that when you could just show a silhouette even to men of a nice figure, hey, you're already halfway there, right?
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily matter that, the face is not that. Look, if your face is you already got facial challenges, might as well have a nice silhouette going. If your man, as you say, is the kind that wants to be listened to, do that. If your man is like me, and when he comes home, he needs 30 minutes of you not saying anything to him, do that too.
Yep.
Right? Whatever it may be. So basically, it seems like, okay, this self-awareness thing is to be able to discern, be able to kind of granularize, be able to break down a big elephant into many parts such that you can move some parts, right?
Yeah, and being dynamic, not being the kind of person that refuses to change because that's not me, or I'm not being my truth, or, saying nonsense things like that, right? If your man is a particular way and you want that man and you know that you're competing heavily to get that man, be self-aware enough to know that you need to give that man what he wants. Again, this is vice versa on the other end. You can't just be there projecting what you wish you had, or it shouldn't be this way, or it shouldn't be that way. If you're a 5 dude, you want a 10, right? Know that it's gonna take a lot of maintenance to maintain that 10, and you need to be self-aware of that, what that 10 wants and or needs. That 10's going to be getting counter offers from other dudes. You can't just be like, oh well, she should. No, that doesn't make sense.
And hence the whole, twice now, or perhaps three times, I've mentioned the whole difficulty with rising above what we call an adjustable six, in the sense that because of the context, okay, that they're in, through no fault of theirs and through no fault of yours, it may be wise for long-term purposes to avoid the nines, the eights, perhaps even, because it's just a mess over there. It's a big mess. And perhaps self-awareness is part of this too, understanding, being self-aware enough to see that, hey, maybe I don't want a 9 or a 10. Okay, because through no fault of theirs, they're like spoiled children.
Yeah, let me give this guys an example. Why do you think the so-called jock behaves the way he does and gets away with it? Why do you even think, let's say, if he's involved in some kind of case with peace leave, they sometimes protect him? It's because he adds value to the culture in a way, and he's the top dog. He can get away with it. That same nerd will also get away with it when he is Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg. So when he's in the peak of his own hierarchy, he gets away with shit.
People in the peak of the hierarchy get away with crap, and they become spoiled, and it maybe become a. So that's interesting. That's a nice way to put it there. The halo effect, in other words, is real. Okay, so far, okay, you have kind of opened up this word of self-awareness and why we should more closely examine it and how it would lead us to getting the outcomes that we want. Now, when you started out, you were talking about the internal versus the external, right? So let's go there for a second, because I posed the whole thing of, hey, how can a 6, is what I started with, say, hey, I want to manifest, right? And then we went to some practical things which are very kind of mental. But I want to go in to your being now, in terms of how can you actually not be the person that says, I'm too good to make change? Is this a decision? Is this a calculation? Do I have to show you some arguments? What exactly is the switch between the person who is just purely delusional, saying, hey, I'm fine the way I am, or the world is not fair, or what about this, what about that, what about isms, and delusional lack of accountability, whatever it may be, on the male side and the female side, in whichever context, sexual marketplace context, work context, whatever it may be? Is it a decision? Is it a rational thought? What is it? Or are you just lucky? Is it a privilege that some of us can be self-aware?
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. I definitely think that people who have had more challenges generally are more self-aware than people who haven't. So there's that element. It's a simple, needs argument. If you can get away with things, if you're a beautiful woman, you'll get away with a lot more things. You're gonna be less accountable than the woman who has to go work a job in a warehouse and feed a family and all that kind of stuff. Society is less likely and willing to just let her off. However, that's a generality there, and it's not really a significant self awareness. The true self awareness that reaches at the level of enlightenment, right? That one, I think some people are just luckier.
Some people are lucky, right? So now we're back in the beginning. And I'm like, okay, why the hell are we talking about self-awareness if it just comes down to luck? Hey, what if I don't have the challenges that'll put me in that position? The requisite challenges. Now, you said required Perhaps I don't know if it's necessary or sufficient, or whichever way you want to put these challenges in terms of vis-a-vis self-awareness. How do you want to break it down
Watch
there?
this. Okay, first watch this video, meditate on this video, apply this video, and this will circumvent all the luck stuff that we're talking about. If you listen to videos like this and you take them seriously enough and you act on them, then you see what you're doing is you're opening up your mind to all the stuff that you are missing, which other people had a natural advantage to why they're ahead of you in that particular way. But
What's the
if you don't,
incentive for them to do that? Is it because of purely of the outcomes that you're seeking? That'll be incentivize you to say, okay, well, somehow I'm going to believe that if I'm more self-aware, because there's an element of belief here. I have to believe what this video is saying. Now, granted, we've tried to make things, shall we say, rational and kind of pointed out, like, oh, okay, this is how the self-awareness goes away. This is how you become a spoiled person. These are the ways in which you can take some things and move it to other categories. You know, you can kind of work the system to get what you want. So is the incentive just, hey, believe that you will get these outcomes and therefore you apply the content of this video?
yeah, that's interesting. I would say that probably you do need to actually have a reason to doing things. Most people don't just do things because it's true or correct. A
Mhm.
goal is not a bad thing. But like we said before in other videos, you need to have a goal that's higher than God itself. The goal has to be basically to a point, to a level that is granular enough that it affects you. However, it is high level enough that you won't reach that goal necessarily. So an example here is mental health. If you're more self-aware, you're going to suffer from less mental health issues because a lot of mental health issues stem from your brain's inability to kind of contend with certain things that's going on in your life and able to kind of put things in the right place and resolve them neatly in a way. So think of your brain like a computer. If you've got viruses and bugs, that's basically going to prevent communication with other devices and software. So if you're not self-aware, then basically you don't have that antivirus software that's going to be able to go figure out what the virus is from the actual software that you want in your brain. So self-awareness helps with debugging your brain from then obviously this leads to a better mental health.
Hmm. Better mental health. I like the virus analogy because if you go down to the physical health thing, you got those antibodies who are aware
It's the
of the
same
content.
thing. Yep, exactly.
They're aware of those whom don't belong there and where the problems are, and then they attack. Okay.
Exactly. Right.
So faith and self-awareness are very tightly, closely linked. So a lot of people come out and they tell the masses, they say, hey, manifest the 10 outcomes, manifest the outcomes of the Steve Jobs or whomever it is you're trying to be. And you just got to have faith. And we're seemingly now seeing that it is more self-awareness, which is more the ability to see and then break down the parts of any particular context, any particular game that you're involved in, any game theoretic situation that you're in, sexual marketplace being a very simple one that we all kind of understand, and say, hey, if I am not at 10 in one particular regard, how can I shift it and leverage another thing? Because it is 9 times out of the 10 in any of these games, you don't just have one lever. Okay. There are
Hey, you
many
know what they
different
say?
levers to pull.
You know what they
Mhm.
say? They say that A students are the technician, B students are maybe the managing technicians, and then the C students are actually the managers, and then the D students are the owners of the companies, right?
Mhm.
Why do they do this? It's because the D student is self-aware enough to realize he sucks at coding, but what he's good at is building structures, building people in and bringing them and seeing, again, self-aware within the context of where you fit into this world. If the D student, and by D student, we're assuming here that this correlates to the skills. So obviously, it's a bit more complex than this, but that's how it is. You become self-aware to know your value that you bring, and you bring it to the best level.
Hmm. Bringing the value that you have to the best level. I want to stick to the faith point. Here's what I'm trying to say, and we'll see what you think about it, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. We'll wrap it up seeing what we saw, what we said, and what can be applied. But the faith thing I want to say is this, that if you get into this habit of looking at a situation that you are involved in, it is self awareness after all, right? You're involved in a situation, which makes it hard to see the situation, right? Would we agree so far? So, like, whenever you're
Yes.
involved, yes. Okay. So that is why it's a problem, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a problem just because there's a fog or it's a complex mathematical situation. It's a problem. It's hard to see because you're involved. Whenever you are involved in the dating scene in this particular situation that we've been using so far, the sexual marketplace. You're involved with regards to your skills and your advancements in your chosen career field. You're involved in there. Your emotions are tied in. Your sense of self is tied in. So it becomes difficult for you to see the situation because you're in that fog of first person perspective, subjectivity, bias, right? So, however, if you practice more and more the idea of being able to look at the situation that you're in, see what your outcomes that you're looking for are, see what the cards that you have, and immediately start breaking it down into, well, how could this game go differently? What else could I leverage? How could I play these pieces differently? Because let's put it another analogy that I said recently, like going away from one button on your control pad to two or three buttons that you can push, right? If you do this more and more often, you are, or shall I say, this is the manifestation of 10 outcomes. This is the law of attraction. This is the secret. Because what you're going to do is whenever you find a situation that seems somehow kind of weirdly impossible, you're going to be so much in the habit of having seen weirdly impossible things shift and come out, you getting the outcomes that you wanted because of some unlikely route, some unlikely button that you manifested in your controller and pushed, some unlikely lever, some unlikely thing that you leveraged. The more and more you do this, the more confidently you're going to face mountains with your mustard seed of faith. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's actually yeah, that actually sounds extremely accurate because I think you describe nicely how faith develops. Because this whole like people like Teal Swan and all these people will tell you, you can manifest things and this is, but they don't necessarily tell you how to reach that level. Because there's in Christianity or many religions, there's this idea that when you trust in God and you overcome one problem, the challenges do get harder, but the old challenges basically go away because you've built that element of faith. You just kind of know that it will get sorted. But why? It's because you've been building on knowing, okay, this is how these things go. This is how I'm going to find this magic thing over here to help me out on this other thing over there. And it is magical, but it's also practical. There's elements in both, but it all comes with experience and overcoming challenges and creating milestone of faith and basically acting out your principles. The Bible itself says that faith without works is meaningless.
Yeah.
You need to
Just
go and
backwards.
act out on your faith.
Yeah, it's more like that. In my view, the works come first, and the works could be luck, as you said. You just mentioned
Mhm.
again overcoming obstacles. The works could have just been thrown at you. You were born in a situation where hey, you had to do some works, if you will. You had to have overcome these challenges in unlikely ways. In other words, you had no choice. You had to find the unlikely path because otherwise you would have died or something, right? These are the challenges we're talking about, whereby life forces you to look at the chessboard, right? The game theoretic situation that you're in, and to manifest a different lever, a different path, a different controller, a different combination of buttons to push, and whoo, you made it out. After you make it out of a situation like that, just to reiterate what we were saying, time and time again, it's going to happen that you're going to see similar situations and you're going to try again. And you're going to be like, oh, it worked again. And that's how you continue to build. Okay. It's not because, and you're never 100% because, you keep on
No.
doing this, you're going to have a rate of success. Let's say 60, 70, 80% if you're really good. If you're really good, you're being able to pull through in tough, unlikely situations where the decks are stacked against you. The game is rigged against you, if you will. You're going to be able to pull through 80% of the time. Why? Not because of woo, magic, blah, blah, blah. Because internally, you've been able to fortify yourself to be able to move through to the other side. In other words, you're able to move through time doing certain kinds of things, which now I'm sounding woo. Move through time doing certain kinds of things. What are you talking about? I'm talking about seeing those levers, right? And I'm not being specific. One could give a specific example, right? Let's give a specific example, okay? You have a specific example? Or should we?
Yeah.
Go ahead. What's your
Yeah. I
specific
mean,
example?
okay. Okay, mine is simple. It's John McWhorter growing up. No, not John McWhorter. LeBron James. LeBron James is growing up in a certain place with a single mother and everything. Everything's stacked against him in life. Statistically, if you look at all the outcomes of boys brought up by single mothers. But what does he do? He focuses and hones in and realizes, hey, I'm tall. Hey, I'm quite big. Hey, I'm good in this sport. Hey, let me go and take the sport to the end. He then removes himself. He then develops as things go on. Oh, businessman, like potential. He sees, okay, I'm seen as the face of NBA, etc. He embraces it. He does things in a certain way. We may even call him Sim sometimes, but he's self-aware enough to make the right moves at the right time. But there's another kid out there who's saying, "Hey, things are stacked against me." Starts blaming everything other than looking within self on how to alleviate himself from that problem. And actually, you kind of hit this earlier. One of the reasons people don't want to acknowledge that there is something they can do or that they should do anything is fear of failure.
100%. The fear of failure is a big deal. And if you don't get into situations, games where you are able to face that fear, not and again, the facing of the fear is simply you just become acclimated to it, right? It is not some crazy weird thing, right? You face certain kinds of temperature, certain kinds of climate, certain kinds of food, certain kinds of uh, ecosystems with their biota, the biology going on. You get acclimated to different things, right? And you get
Yeah,
acclimated
octopus.
to what, like an octopus?
Yeah,
Getting acclimated and changing the texture and so on and so forth. But basically, you get acclimated to things. You get acclimated to things, and you can also get acclimated to the feeling of fear. The sinking sensation in your stomach when you're like, oh my God, will I be able to get this thing done?
but by the way, acclimation. Do you know the etymology of that term? Or could you abstract it? It's actually quite simple. I think I'm correct. I haven't checked it, but
Climate.
yeah, that's it.
All right. Okay. That one was simple enough. I think neither of us knows if we're correct, but we have the same intuition. So the idea of your sinking, there's a feeling in you, right? That it's like, oh my God, everything is gonna blow up. Okay. The more you feel that feeling and things don't end up blowing up, the more you're gonna make massive
Right.
leaps in your
But
life.
if you do have a bomb strapped on you, things might blow up. Let's just in context.
Hey,
People come in the chat.
this is
What
the
if you
part.
got a
This is
bomb?
the part where this is the part where the art comes in. Okay, this is the part where the blues comes in. Where it's like, hey, yes, your head could get chopped off. So what?
Yeah, that's the thing. You gotta you gotta reach a point and say, okay, you know what, this might fail, but you know what, generally things don't fail if I learn all these things, get the faith, the winnings, and the because you trust yourself, the more you're able to overcome things. So, but you still have to kind of understand at the end of the day that it can all blow up at any point, and that's still okay because you're
Be
on this journey.
self-aware. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's like,
You're
yes.
self-aware enough to know that it could blow up. You're self-aware enough to know the different levers that you can pull. You're self-aware enough to be able to see yourself in context. That is the basic thing that we're brought out of this. You know what? You've convinced me. You have convinced me that I should not be so angry at such what one may call low-level terms like self-aware. Let me ask you this. Do you understand why it's so cringy to me what I call these low level terms like self-awareness or like critical thinking, for example? which, by the way, we also went through. We did critical thinking, and in a previous episode of this conversation, and now we're talking about self-aware. Do you understand why I'm just like,
Yeah, but I get it. I mean, self-aware. I mean, what the hell does that mean? Yeah, I'm gonna try sound like our friendly neighborhood Kermit the Frog. Well, but life is suffering, and you gotta be self-aware that the potential that the eagle might come in and eat your head, and then kill your dad. That you have to go inside of a whale and save him. Yeah, shout out to Jordan Peterson. But there is a point here, right? There's a Jordan Petersonian sort of philosophy going on here with self-awareness and also critical thinking, is that these words are mythopoetic. They come from ages of Stoic philosophical concepts that are just then generalized into a word or phrase. Be self-aware enough, be virtuous, be modest, all these things that we say to each other and to certain members of certain communities or genders or anything, because they mean something in a mythopoetic way. There have been these men such as the guy with long hair and dreads, what was his name? Samson, who fell for the Delilahs, and even though he could see that this woman betrayed him, literally he still told her the truth. And guess what? This happened. There's been simps all over YouTube who have done these things. One of them was on Bernard's show. I forgot his name, the guy making 10K a month, and he was just out there simping. It seems crazy, these stories, right?
15K a month. He would want to correct you on that.
Right. Making 15K a month, and he was out there, slipping. So the point here is that these words, self-awareness, critical thinking, modesty, they have a mythopoetic aspect to them. They come from somewhere, and then they just generalize into a word that gets misused, or when people tell you about it, they don't quite mean it the way that they could truly mean.
Punching them in the face. That's my summary. When people say,
I mean that,
punch them in the face.
Hey, I mean that lady thought I wasn't self-aware, but I was actually very self-aware. I knew exactly what I do, and I did it because it was fun.
So 100%. I like that you put it in that way, where there are these admonishments to groups of people. Even they say, "Hey, men, don't be Samson. There's the Samson thing. That Samson thing. Don't do it." They say, "Hey, women, be modest." And you know why? Because women are not modest. Women are, they're horrible when it comes to their lack of modesty, right? That the whole boss chick, I'm a queen bee. That's why.
Hey, why do you think the Bible was like, hey, dress code for the women and stuff, be modest? It's because they knew what they would be doing with the extended long nails are longer than the Holland Tunnel, out there, all these things, because they
you don't have a dress code, you're going to get what you get on Instagram. If you don't tell women to be modest, they're going to do the thing. In other words, different groups of people sin differently because they're constituted differently. If you take men versus women, one has upper body strength, the other one has a mouth that doesn't shut up, right? And they use these things to tyrannize the world. A man is going to do violence, so we have to block him in the violence area. And he's going to be a simp, so you have to say, hey, don't be a simp. A woman is going to be immodest and emotionally and abuse everybody around her. So we say, hey, be modest and keep your mouth shut, right? These things they lose their meaning, they lose their essence, they lose that sauce when people just kind of bandy them around. Oh, be modest in the dress code and the this and the that. But we have long forgotten what they mean. And for idiots like me,
shout out to all the solipsists out there.
Yes, I won't say anything else. I think you've answered. You've already said what I was going to say. So good explanation of why I don't like it, because it's bastardized. It's too big. It doesn't mean anything anymore. I left these things alone when I was 10 years old, and I'm now dealing with these particulars. Self-aware. I've broken down the pieces. I have like 10,000 buttons on my controller and somebody comes in with this clumsy, big one-button controller, and I just want to punch them in the face. Like, literally, I'm like, it doesn't even seem like the same world we live in. But it every now and again makes sense to go back and say, hey, that thing you call critical thinking, here's what it actually means. That thing that you call self-aware, here's what it actually means. That thing that you call, hey, why are women told to be modest and men told to be this and that? These are the tendencies, the pitfalls, right, that we're trying to keep you from falling into. So, any final thoughts on this whole self-awareness thing?
Yeah, actually, no. Well, this one is a little bit very off, but tendencies and tendon, tendon kind of holds up it's tendencies. Anyways, yeah, it is.
Okay, okay. I'm glad you said that was off. Yeah.
yeah, very off. But anyways, self-awareness. I think the main thing here is learn yourself, know yourself, be thyself. If you have, it's what you've said before. Turn the other cheek, right? What does that mean? Is, well, you have to be a sharp sword that chooses to sheath itself. Meaning, you have to be you want to be a situation where you become self-aware enough. And then if you want to ignore all these social cultural norms and these things that society is trying to do, you can, but do it from a position of power, not weakness. So if you are that have all the skills ready that you could actually get your 10 or whatever you want, and you can still choose not to do it. But that's your choice out of power, not ignorance.
Power, not ignorance. Knowledge is power in this case. Ignorance will put you in a situation where you're not aware and you're not going to get the outcomes that you want. Ignorance suggests that if you were not ignoring these circumstances, you would indeed act differently and act in a way that is going to be more amenable to your desired outcomes. So I think that is well enough for this particular topic, self-awareness. I think that there are many other branches that we can go into, especially when we start to go internally and when we say, hey, if you fortify yourself against all the perturbations that come up when, things may not work out, this is the way, this is the one big tool that you have to go into the fire of uncertainty, which the world, after all, is. And the only way to avoid all that uncertainty and fear is to wrap yourself in a nice little safe cocoon where nothing happens and you don't go anywhere. And you're a loser and you're unhappy because you don't like to be wrapped up in a bubble, in a cocoon where nothing happens. But unfortunately, most people do that. They rather wrap themselves in a cocoon where nothing happens rather than face the turmoil, okay? The feeling, image, and talk turmoil. Hence my whole mastery of subjective consciousness, which it always comes back to. If you master how the world appears to you, there's nothing else to talk about. That's why, that's why I don't like all this. Oh, but then there's this, and then there's this one called critical thinking. It's like, for me, it's all just feeling, image, and talk. You master that, everything. I haven't seen anything else. I've yet to see anything else other than feeling, image, talk.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons will breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. calling all your daughters and your sons, we gon' forget it. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising, convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners.